G'day guys. Well, safe to say we're pretty excited. We're going to venture to some new ground up the Coffs. I haven't fished it yet outside. Are you, Jono?
No, not at all, but I've heard good things about it. Good reports on shallow water snapper fishing.
Yeah, at the moment I'm hearing that they're actually smacking into the snapper. So what we're basically going to do today is just give a rundown on the gear, and more so when we chart a new territory, to actually learn how to use your electronics to find fish and potential areas to fish. Any advice, Jono, on the areas to target?
From local reports of people that we've done a bit of research on, they tend to tell us to target anywhere from the 10 to 15 to 20 metre range, and they reckon they're absolutely killing it up there at the moment. So that's the reason behind why we want to go to Coffs Harbour and do a bit of a road trip and a test ourselves and see what we can pick up.
Yeah, that's basically what we're hearing. So obviously we'll get into our electronics in a minute and show exactly how we can find those areas. It's a big paddock out there, so you obviously don't want to go out and fish blind, and you want to concentrate your areas and focus on areas where you think are going to be the most effective, and eliminate as much downtime as you can. You know, you've probably got that early morning bite period in that shallow water, and potentially late afternoon. We're going to target the early morning, and so we probably want to maximise our chances as early as we can by putting ourselves right in the spot early. So
yeah, so we're going to pack the boat up tomorrow evening, get it all hooked up, ready to go, and probably head up there at about 3:30. Get up there nice and early.
Yeah.
That way we're on the ramp, we're set up, ready to go as daybreak's going, and get our best bite time and beat the wind and get right into them, hopefully.
Sounds good. So we'll probably start from the base and work our way up through the gear and tackle, and then we'll get into the sounder and some techniques that we're going to use to put ourselves into the fish. Firstly, starting with our reels, anything for shallow water snapper fishing, sort of in that 10 up to that 50 metre range. I'm looking at fishing anywhere, depending on how finicky the fish are, as light as say a 12 pound and anywhere up to a 20 pound. I typically don't really go heavier than 20 pound, and I find that does the trick.
Yeah, I find you go too heavy, the fish see the line and it doesn't drift down that column quick enough, and you're putting more line out than necessary and missing the actual target when you're trying to get the end of the reefing time.
Yeah.
And you feel a lot more on the lighter gear than you actually do on the heavy gear. Like, people think you've got to skull drag these things off the bottom, and it's just not true.
No, look, I've found that although they can be dirty, sometimes they can be pretty clean fighters, and 15 to 20 pound braid lets you put a fair bit of hurt on. If you're fishing with the right reel and the right rod, you can still stick it into them pretty hard and make a good sport out of it. So here's my new baby. I've got the Shimano Vanford in the 5000. The 5 and the 4 are the same size, but the thing that I like about the 5 is it comes with the ball knob handle rather than the T, and I just find that a lot more comfortable to fish with rather than having a T-bar in your hand. Now, I've paired this up with the 20 pound Tasline. Honestly, I think Tasline is probably the best on the market at the moment. It's 20 pound Tasline's looking at probably a 30 to 35 pound break-in strain, and it's as thin as a 15 to 12 pound. So you can really maximize your spool capacity and your break-in strength in a quality line. Yeah, so that's what I'm pairing up with, and I'll probably start at around a 15 pound leader.
And the good part about being half as thick as normal braid and twice the quality is you can also use these when you're spinning for little GTs and things like that, because it holds double the line, the capacity, and the reels will actually handle it. You don't need the biggest and bulkiest reels to do this, and you can spread your diversity over snapper to other fish with that line capacity and the strength and the thinness, because you double your braid and technically double your distance that you can chase a fish down with. So you don't need a big gear to stop the fish. You can actually let it wear itself out and chase it down more.
Absolutely. While we're looking into that too, obviously the thing that I like about the Vanford is they're the upgrade to the Stratic CI4, and they're such a light reel. So compared to the Stratic, this reel's weighing in at the same as the 2000, and it's a 5000. So it is quite light, really light, especially if you're out there throwing lures all day. It's really comfortable to hold and really comfortable to throw.
They are nice in the hand, like they are very light. It's truly amazing in the weight difference. And when you're fighting fish over a few hours, you do notice holding on your gear all day that it can get a bit much on the forearms, but dropping a couple of 100 grams out of your gear significantly changes that.
Absolutely. So we can talk us through the other reel we're using.
Shimano Nasky 5000. Now these things, don't get me wrong, are an outstanding bit of gear. Like both said, they're just upper class. They're the next one up. The weight difference you'll definitely notice, but same sort of handle grip as what they have on them, and they are very nice, but you feel the smoothness of them. They are very, very great to use. Same similar distance in the line capacity, but this, what braid have we got on this one, Bo?
That's a Power Pro on that. That's a 20 pound Power Pro. So with its thickness, you probably get a little bit less on that spool. And look, honestly, Power Pro, top quality line. Anything from your Power Pros, J Braids. Honestly, it's a person to person pick. They're all pretty good. But I've come to the Tas line now, which I'm really keen and excited to really hook into some good fish on it. But obviously Power Pro and J Braid I've fished for a long time, and they've always been really good.
Yeah, J Braid's never let me down in the light gear and the smaller stuff, even on some of the bigger gear. But it'd be really handy to see on Friday the comparison on the two different reels. I don't see there being a great deal, but just over time, like I said, with the weight difference and how good the braid actually casts out and goes down through the water column, would be really nice to see. And that way we can give you a bit more review on the comparison to different reels, different lines, and going up a grade to down a grade.
Absolutely, and we will touch on that that whole line diameter and what it affects with your lure and your sink rate and things like that as well. We'll touch on that a little bit more when we get to it. But yeah, that's a look at the reels, guys. That's what we're going to be throwing.
It's important to note that you do want to spend a little bit on a quality reel. Like, you can go to BCF, Anaconda and places like that and spend 70 bucks on a reel, 20 bucks on a bit of mono and go out there and fish for these things, but the chances of you doing the insides of your reel are a lot more higher, and the strike rate on good braid, good gear is so much better than just a cheap little reel that's already got the line on it, a bit of mono from the shop, or a bit of cheap braid that you can buy for 19 bucks. Like, it really pays off to get good gear.
Yeah, and that's a good point there that you raised with the mono. Obviously, fish and braid, the reason that braid's become so predominant, especially in the last sort of 10 years, and now pretty much it's the go-to for every angler, is the fact that it eliminates all form of stretch. So it puts us in direct contact with our lure the whole time, so that if anything does happen, and the fish sometimes are a little bit finicky, and rather than slamming stuff hard, they might have little subtle pickups in that. Because we're in such contact with our lure and there's no stretch, the braid actually allows us to feel those bites. Whereas if we were on mono, once we take out the stretch in the line and things like that, it eliminates the fact of actually being able to feel those bites, and you probably lose a fair bit of fish that way.
Especially in the ocean, because you do have more line out than what you would in the river, and stretch is a big factor in actually landing a fish and hooking up successfully. Like, people say that you need stretch, and you know, without all of that you're going to snap line and lose more fish. It's not true, because you still use a leader on these, you know, 1 to 2 to 3 meters long, and that's all the stretch you actually need. And it's not mainly about the stretch, it's about the fish not seeing that little bit of line where your lure hangs, so it imitates a bait a lot better. But yeah, braid outweighs mono 10 to 1 easily.
Absolutely, yeah. Plus also, when you do strike to put it in, you've got direct contact to actually to set those hooks and get a nice hook up, you know. Whereas with the mono with a little bit of stretch, you probably eliminate a little bit of your force to be able to set those hooks really fast and neat. Whereas with the braid, I feel like you just can set the hook straight away.
Exactly. All right, guys, we just ran through the reels and what we actually use in our line class and sizes. Now, these are a couple of the rods that we will pair up with these reels. So on this one, this is the Veritas, which is a 2 to 5 kilo rod, which we pair up with our Shimano. And Bo's got...
I'm running the Shimano Raider over here, and its weight class I'm looking at a 4 to 8. This is the snapper series of the Raider. I fish my rods a little bit longer. This is about a 7.2. I believe it's a little bit longer than my Veritas. Yeah, what's that?
And we've got the 7-foot Veritas.
Yeah, so I'm actually a 7.3 on this, and that's the 7, yeah.
And the difference in the rods is, obviously the weight class is a little bit heavier, but that one is more of a stiffer stick, where this one, as you can see, it's got a lot more movement, a lot more sensitive in the tip, so you can actually double up, not just for soft plastics, for a bit of light jigging and slow jigging with this one too. It works really good on both. And it's a very, very light piece of gear. It's very well balanced when the reel's on it. And as you can see there, the light class on it. They are a very, very good fishing stick for snapper. I rate them highly.
Yeah, look, they've been around for a little while now, the Veritas, when they first come out. I definitely jumped on them myself and got amongst them. I do love the Veritas. But since I've gone to a bit of a heavier stick, which I'm up now in the 4 to 8 on this, it probably is on the heavy side, but I feel like I get a really, really, really tight action with this, and I feel really direct and in contact with my lure with a little bit stiffer tip. And I'll pair this up obviously with the reel we spoke about before, the 5000 Vanford. But yeah, I do enjoy using the Raiders for a cheap rod. Shimano have made. They come out pretty nice.
They do hold their own, and don't get me wrong, the line class might be up to 8 kilo, but don't doubt them to catch a 10-12 kilo snapper. Like, they really do hold their own in what they are. It's, you know, you really want the quality in the reel to be as best as you can get. Your rods you can back down a little bit. You don't need to spend $1,000 on them, but you still want to spend a couple $100 on a good rod. It will really help your chances.
Absolutely, yeah, that's exactly right. Now, little cheeky offer. Actually ducked out to replenish some stocks today, so that we can have everything equipped the best we can to target these fellas. So
So I went out today, as he said before, and went to pick up some gear. Now, we're fared for a few paddle tails, as you can see. We have regularly gone for jerk shads, but in recent times in our local grounds, we're finding the paddle tails are working a lot better. And the colours that we've gone for, in the lighter water, as you can see, they're not very bright and out there. You don't really need that. It's when you start getting down deeper and further into the column, you want a bit more colour in your lures, which you can step up to something that's a bit more gold and black and a bit shiny, or you can go back to your pinks and greens and reds. They all work really well.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We also found with some recent sessions that I typically was even up closer to the 7-inch range, but I've dropped that down to the 5. And even if you're finding that the fish are a little bit hard up for a bite, the easiest way to entice a bite is to drop a little bit smaller. I find, lighten your gear up, change your size down, and work up through your column until you can sort of find out, well, what they're eating and the size that they're attacking at the time. But definitely the 5 sort of inch paddle tails at the moment are doing a fair bit of damage.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. And it's also about not just in the size of the lures you're using, you also got to make sure you got the right jig heads. So we've got a few sizes here that Bo will go through, depending on the size of your lure and the depth that you're fishing.
Yeah,
and what works for us.
Yeah, so look, I obviously, when I'm getting up to the 5s and over, I'm typically looking at a 6.0. I find anything from the 7 to the 5 paired up with the 6.0, the right 6.0 can work really well. Even if you get up to a 7, sometimes I'll jump to a 7.0 just so I got a lot of hook showing, make sure I increase my hookup rate. But then when we get down to the 4s and even the slimline 5s, I'll even drop down to a 5.0 and I'll fish really light. So you can see here, this is a 1/6. I'll probably start focus my attention at the start of the day in the shallow water, starting with a 1/6 jig head and 15-pound leader, and actually fish pretty light with a small lure and work my way up and see if I'm finding that the fish are active and they are biting on the smaller lure, and I am having a diminished size of or quality of fish, I'll start to up my lure class and see up my size and see how big of a lure I can push the fish to entice. So obviously the old theory still works: bigger the bait, the bigger the fish. So yeah, we'll that'll be our starting grounds. I feel we start like that, and then we'll work our way through and see how we go.
That is a good theory, but you don't need the bigger sinker, the bigger weight, the bigger lead to actually get down to get to the fish. It will actually ruin a lot of your fishing if you start increasing jig heads right up into the 3/4 size. It's unnecessary in shallow water. Look, and if the current's ripping through, go another day. Like, realistically, you just want to stick with that smaller jig head size. It fishes better, more consistency, and better strike rates we find.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, just touched on there, like you said, with that with that whole slow sinking thing. We find that, especially with the snapper, majority of bite will come on that initial drop. After that, probably 70 to 80% of my fish will come on that initial drop. After that initial drop, we find that you can pop it back to the boat, but pick up less fish that way. That initial drop's the first port of call to really get hammered on the way down. And I find that the more natural you can have that lure, you know, drifting through the water column and looking natural, the better chance you got of something coming up and smacking it.
Exactly right, and that's why the jig head size is important, because if you're sinking your bait so fast, it's just going to go straight through. It's not going to look as natural as a normal dead bit of fish or a live little schoolie going past. So you want to imitate that as best as you can, and it really does help to like get a bit of knowledge, do a bit of research and understand it, and find out a bit more about what you're actually doing before you just go out there blind and try the heavy gear and think that it works every time, because it just doesn't.
Absolutely, that old lifestyle that we all grew up to, the no, I'm getting 100 pound and a big rod, and no matter what we catch,
I'm getting a pound snapper lead and we're going to go bang these things.
It's coming home with me. Yeah, look, unfortunately, probably not the most successful.
No, you're going to end up with sore forearms and no fish in the boat.
Yeah, which we'll try and avoid. I'll pair up with some Shimano Oshia leader. Absolutely love this. I'm on the 16 pound, closest to the 15. We'll start on that. If we get dusted in some structure, I'll probably up it to the 20. Honestly, probably we won't go any heavier than the 20. If we're getting done in at 20, we'll
fish win.
Yeah,
the fish win on the day.
we'll let them have that one. So yeah, look, Oshia, I really like the Shimano Oshia. As you can probably tell, pretty hard on the Shimano gear. I find Shimano have pretty refined sort of gear, especially in this sort of target range, and I try and pair it all together and it seems to work for me.
But you'll find that it's a little bit thinner than your normal leader. It ties a lot cleaner and does hold that strength in the knots better.
Absolutely, yeah, that's definitely a fact. All right. Now, as we've come to know, there's a bit of a cheat code out here. If you have got a spare rod in the rocket holder or sitting there doing nothing, sometimes it pays to throw down an Occy jig. This is a 60 gram, which is probably a little bit heavy for the lighter water. I've got a lot of lighter ones there, but I just thought I'd have this one in the packet to show you. These guys are a no action lure. We don't actually need to do anything with them. In a rod holder, thrown over the back, bouncing up and down with a swell, these things will smack some of your best fish of the day will come obviously cheating on these. So a bit of lazy fishing.
From literally putting your rod aside in a rod holder, forgetting about it, and all of a sudden looking over here and line getting spooled off. It happens quite regularly. They are a fantastic tool to have in your tackle box.
Absolutely, adds a little bit of camaraderie in the boat too. It's a race for the rod to see who can get it.
Yeah, it's just a free for all. You only have one, so you put the rod holder out and whoever's luck it is, well, it's your fish of the day.
Whoever gets there first takes the fish on. So yeah, guys, do yourselves a favour. Get onto the Occy jigs, throw them over, have a little bit of a cheat. You're having a sandwich or whatever, have it sitting in there, you never know.
And if you're going to try plastics, guys, like it is something new out in the ocean for you, just remember, don't put bait on board. Persevere with it. take a good variety of colours, sizes, shapes, different size jig heads, and just give it a real crack, because if you don't, you're just going to go back to the old pilchard, grab it out of the esky and throw it over and try and bottom bash for a snapper. So if you really want to get stuck into this, don't put bait on board, and it will make you sit out there and just go over and over and over different reefs until you actually hook up. And once you do and get the excitement out of a soft plastic in the ocean,
Absolutely.
it's no comparison.
Oh, it's a game changer. As John just said, if you've got a variety, change it up. Don't get stagnant with one. If one's not working, change it. If you're on the bright colours and there's no action and you've been throwing for a little while, change it up. Change to a natural colour. If you're getting no action on that size, drop the size. Drop the weight down. You know, if you always plan to lighten up. That's why I start as light as possible, but don't be afraid to change. Just keep working your way through everything in your arsenal and throw everything you got at them, and I promise you, you will find something that works, and you'll find something they're hitting on the day. If there's fish on the sounder, there's a way to make them bite. So
yeah, and don't be that guy that watches your mate go, oh, he's got the blue one and he just caught 3, and go bang 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 and swap over to the same colour, because it doesn't work exactly like that. Just play around with your own gear, find what you like, what colours you're interested in, and what's working for you. Because you don't need to copy your mate. Just because he's got a couple on that side of the boat, you don't dart to his corner and go, oh, move over, it's my turn. You do what you can, but just keep at it, and they will come.
that's right. Be confident in your gear. Whatever you fish with, as long as you're confident in it and you like it, you're in the right spot.
Now we've sort of talked about rods, reels, lures, jig heads, octo jigs, cheek jigs as we call them. We might get into a bit of the sounder work and show you guys what our sounder looks like, what we use to find fish, and let you guys understand it a bit more.
Mate, I'm bloody excited. I actually can't wait. I'm very excited about this, and obviously having good electronics takes a lot of the guessing out.
It does.
It eliminates a lot of the groundwork. We probably have a newfound appreciation for people in the old days, you know, marking off the stars and landmarks, and a bit of the old
40-foot bit of paper on the table with all the charts lined out, trying to plot a track and get fish, and credit to them.
Yeah, look.
They've done the hard yards, they got the work, and based off what they've done, it gives us a bit of a cheat code. But our new cheat code's behind us.
You know what?
I think we should show them.
We'll take it. As you can see, guys, now we're running the Humminbird. Apex 13 here is the model. Pretty tidy sounder. I run it with the C-Maps, the best C-Maps you can get. So it gives us a lot of options, especially on the chart side of things, which I find make it so much easier exploring new ground. I almost gone to the days of actually needing to plot a mark anymore. We don't really need to do it, as I have such a clear image and view of exactly what I'm doing out there that I don't even really need to look for a mark. So what I'll do is I'll run you through. All right, so we're in the GPS, we're in the chart and maps side of our GPS at the moment. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of ways of how we can actually utilize this information to find the spots before we go out and better put us onto the fish, rather than wasting our time sounding around and looking for ground. This will give us all the information we need to find the ground. Then it's just about finding the active fish. So our first option we're going to look at, which I'll run through, is our color palette. So we have a few different color palettes here, obviously from light water shallow to dark water deep, or we can reverse it. There's dark water shallow to light water deep. I typically find color palette 1 on my sounder to be the best, as it gives me the most broadest range of color spectrum to work through.
And it simplifies it. You can clearly see on there from dark to light to bright what's working, what depth you're at without having to pan through them close colors. I reckon it works better than your very light whites to your really even blues.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I definitely agree with that. 100%. It gives us that spectrum that we can actually decipher between the different depth ranges, and we can get a clear vision of where that range changes. So the first thing is we'll find that that color spectrum that we're comfortable with. By all means, if you're comfortable with a different color, there's no wrong or right here.
Especially if you've got colorblind issues in different colors, it's, you know, whatever works for your eyes.
Absolutely. So we'll come down to chart options next. And the thing we're going to do in chart options here is we're going to go to depth contours. Now, we're going to turn our contour lines on, and we're going to make sure that our contour lines are on high. And what high does, you'll see, is it gives us the most contour information that we can get. to be able to see ledges and steep inclines and declines, we want to have as much information as we can have on the screen, especially I find with my fishing side of my GPS. I like to utilize as much information on hand as possible. So I run them contours on high density. With the color range also, when we're looking at our depth, we can see that we have a palette min range and a palette max range. And what that effectively is the range in which our color palette will change from its start to its end of its palette. Now we're focusing on the shallow areas, so we always want to start that on 0, I find. And then we want to move our palette range max up. Up here, we're going to move our palette range max up to focus on the area of the maximum depth that we'll be fishing in. So anything within that depth range, we're getting a clear view of. I think we spoke, Jono, we were looking at targeting sort of around that 20 metre mark, maybe 15 in the middle there.
Yeah, roughly in between 10 and 20. And you don't need to optimise outside of what you're going to fish, maybe 10 metres or so, but realistically, if you're fishing in shallow water, you don't need to have your sounder set to 150 metres.
Exactly right. So look, we've opted for a 30 metre depth range here, which will actually push a bit past the areas we want to focus. And like Jono, we've touched on, it's easy to change this on the run.
It is.
Okay, so they're the first key settings. Then I just want to come back up here and give you a look at, let's open this up again. Now we've got what's called depth highlights. And what depth highlights does is we can actually turn on a depth highlight and it will highlight any of the depth range that we want to fish with in between. So after we've done a little bit of research, and obviously with our own fishing lately around the area, we're finding that the quality of fish are best in the shallow ranges at the moment.
They are, yeah. It's a lot better during the winter months. We find for ourselves that the shallow water works a lot better.
Absolutely. So especially in those low light periods, the fish are pretty active in those shallows. So what we can do, we can actually come into a depth highlight, and you can see here, I've set it to a color that's not really in my color spectrum and color palette. And I've actually put a range in from 15 to 17 meters, sort of right in that middle range. And it's going to give me sort of a middle base to know where that ground is, and I can work up and down on it. So if we jump out now and we come and we zoom in over here, you can see even as we're coming in, we begin to get a picture of what's around, what's happening in the ocean and what it's doing. And you can see even right out here where we're in 30, 35 meters of water, we actually have these pinnacles coming up to the 15 and 17 and probably even shallower. As you can see, some yellow ground out here. So even up to the sort of the 10 meter range, but it's given us a clear view of all those areas that we want to target and where they are.
And that's a good idea of setting it 10 metres outside your range, because there will be them bommies out wider that will come right up and fish a lot shallower than you think. Just because the water around it's 30, 35 metres doesn't mean the pinnacles and bommies themselves stick around that height.
Exactly right. So we can see where we can watch and have a look at our contour line. We've got pretty even contour range through here coming down, which says to me that the gradient's pretty calm and pretty consistent. And there's not a lot happening now. I would say that that's definitely a sand bottom. But then when we come into the areas like this, which I'll just zoom in on now, we can see that the contour information begins to change a lot rapidly, which lets me know that there's actually some information on the bottom getting given to us there about what's actually happening, that the bottom's rising or dropping. And if we zoom in any more, we can see here that the bottom's actually rising up. We can see through our depth contours, we got 20, 19, 18, all the way up to the 15 meter range here. That's all rising up. So it gives us a clear view there of what's actually going on. Yeah,
it shows outside of what's gravel, what's a little bit of reef, and what's actually got pinnacles and bommies all over it. And that's what you want to find. Gravel, you will pick fish up on the outside of reefs, but you really want the reef around it and in the middle of it to actually predominantly fish better. Like I said, gravel you can fish on and get the odd fish.
Absolutely.
If you have the bommies and pinnacles in the middle and you fish the edges, you're going to get more fish.
Yeah, and you'll find the bait. The bait very rarely will be stuck out on its own. The bait likes to find that cover and it will push into that cover and utilize that reef area for cover and that structure, which will effectively bring the predatory fish in, and they will target that bait fish in and around the edges. We can step it up a level from this, which is what I use next. So I actually throw on a relief shading, which gives me even an even better image, which I'll give you a look at now. It lets me know what's sand and what's not. I'll just come back to our chart options quickly and show you that if we come down to our chart objects and we come into water, we can actually have a look, and we have some filters that we can throw on. So we're looking at wrecks, rocks, obstructions, natural features, fishing objects, and nature of seabed. And effectively, like I spoke about before, we've spoke about having as much information as we can have when we're out there. Nature of seabed, that's a little one that comes in a little bit handy, just to dumb it down a little bit. And what that effectively does is it will give me in text what the area is. I'll try and find something and show you now. So we'll see here that I'm getting told sand, rock, rock, sand, rock, rock. It will actually say gravel where there's gravel, but it will let me know what's there. So that's our relief shading option. And the beauty about relief shading is that aerial imagery will actually penetrate through the water and pick up the substructure down on the bottom. And we'll see if we come into our chart again, and we come into our chart options, and we go into depth and contours, and we get rid of our contour lines. Some might find that they find it a bit easier to identify the rock and reefy areas without the contour lines, as contour information can be a little bit daunting at first reading it. You get better, and I love having the contours on, but at the start I can understand how it might get a little bit daunting. We can actually turn those contours off. Chart options, depth and contours, we'll switch that off, and you'll see here now I'll be solely relying on the relief shading with my depth highlight. That will actually show the rock structure. What you're seeing there is actual imagery of hard substructure. That's rock and reefy and kelp bottoms. So we have a look around. What this does is it gives us the opportunity to really plan ahead on our trip that we spoke about before. We can actually decipher the areas we want to fish prior to even being in the same postcode. We can pick a route, even throw some marks in if we wish to, and when we get to these areas we can effectively pull our boat up and know if we want to fish this edge of this reef here, we can come in and I'll actually get a picture of my boat and where I am in relation to this. I can come in and set my drift up to hit that edge, come in stealth, fire the electric up if I need be, or kill the motor and hit my drift, so I drift that edge, throw my lures, concentrating on where the sand meets the rock, and pick those fish up. Now obviously a sound over the area definitely is what you want to do. So typically I'll come into the area, I'll kill my motor and then come over it with the sounder, have a look around the edges and find if I can find any bait being targeted by predatory fish. Which, Jono, what do they do? How do we know what's going on there?
Well, what you want to look for on your sounder when you got your split screen up is you don't want bait on the bottom, like right up close to the reef. You actually want to separate a gap between it, so you want a few meters in between the bait and the actual fish you're targeting. That way you can decipher between what's bait and what's actually the target species down the bottom. And the idea of that is when your bait's actually going down through the water column, they're going to be easily able to pick that out rather than just go, it's another big school, we can't pick one out just as easy off the bottom. We can just single out that little bit of fish that's there, because generally when a big bait cloud comes by, they're not going to attack it like you think they would, but they pick off the stragglers that fall to the bottom or to the side.
Absolutely, yeah. So like what we're looking for there, as Jono said, is we're actually looking to see the bait off the bottom, and then predominantly if we can see a couple of strong return arches underneath that bait, it lets us know that those fish are active and they're actually pushing the bait off the bottom and they're in feeding mode. They're actually in a zone to strike, whereas sometimes they can be a little bit shut down and they're not really in a mood to feed. And when you see bait sitting on the bottom, as Jono said, typically there's not a lot that's hunting it. So
yeah, not as much action. You want it lifted up that at least 2 to 3 meters away from where they're feeding. That way you know that they're down there, they're active, they're moving around, and the bait knows that too. So they're getting out of the way, but that's where you want to fish. And you don't want to fish in the middle or on top of the reef. You want to fish the outskirts. That's where your predatory fish actually hang about. You're going to get a lot more rubbish through the middle. You'll pick up all your trouts and your little rock cods and boots and things like that that you don't want to bring home. So if you actually fish the edges and around the reef rather than on top of it, you'll actually pick up more of what you're trying to catch than all the crap.
Absolutely. Well, I think that sort of concludes our sounder session.
Yeah, it gives everyone a fair idea, and like, just because we've got all of this gear, it does help us. It eliminates the old plot finders and charts and marks and stuff, but putting it into action is what we're going to go try in an area we've never fished before, and that's the exciting part about it.
Absolutely. We're coming in blind. Oh, well, as blind as you can. We're coming in with the best eyes, as blind as you can. So yeah, a little bit better vision than Ray Charles. Hopefully we can get stuck into a few.
As Bo said, we can plot our maps from home 2 hours away from where we're going to fish, actually say where we want to go try without being there. Like, that's what this helps us with.
And I reckon this sort of sets up a pretty good sort of horseshoe loop for us, Jono.
Yeah, not bad actually.
Head out and back in. Everything seems pretty tight there. I mean, if we can't find fish in that structure, we might be better off going to the pub.
There is one more thing we can show you that a lot of ocean boats don't have, and it is another game changer in the ocean world. It eliminates bungee cords, ropes, tangles, anchors getting stuck on reefs. Like, in smaller boats and reef systems, like river systems, the electric motor has been a game changer for a lot of people, and a lot of actually tournament fishermen, they love it. And having it on an outside boat is the exact same thing. You spend the quality money on it, put it up there in the price point where you can have spot lock and things like that, and have circle back on your GPS. The electric motor will change your game in how you actually attack the ocean and fish it. It's a bloody good tool.
So we've opted for the Minn Kota Ulterra. The main reason that I've gone for the Ulterra is because I'm lazy and I don't like to stow it myself. I like to press a button and have it stowed. This is 24 volt. I believe it's 80 pound. Yep. So this is a 24 volt, 80 pound. And as Jono said, with the spot lock and things like that, the good thing about the Minn Kota, the reason that we've chose Humminbird is because they actually talk to each other. And effectively, if I do find somewhere where there are fish actively feeding, especially outside, I can actually hit those fish on my sounder and hit my spot lock, and this will put us right over the top of the fish and ensure that we stay there and stick that spot, and we can get maximum time with our lure in the strike zone.
And you may think, oh, electric motor, useless in the ocean. We were actually out 3 weeks ago and the wind come up well above than what it should have been.
At least 30-degree winds, wasn't it? She was pretty...
Oh, it was howling, and this thing held us in 1.5 meter swell without a bloody worry in the world. It was fantastic. So they are worth it.
Incredible technology. They really are a game changer. We started on them, especially for bassing and things like that, getting up. So you can have a silent approach and just hold the edge of that, banks, and more so in rivers and dams. But they've actually come into their own in the outside game.
And the time it eliminates actually fishing, like the downtime of the anchor, pulling it up, dropping it down, making sure it's in there, don't get tangles, you snap a bungee cord, what do you do then? Like, it's hit a button, start the motor, drive to the next point.
Yeah, it is, absolutely, you're right. It's definitely has been a game changer for us, and it's something that we've really been enjoying. Obviously starting to use it a lot more, especially in those shallower water areas. If we do see something, we can just pull up, and if we don't like the area, simple flick of a button and we're out of there again.
fishing's about fishing. Right, more time you get in the water chasing the fish, the better. So whatever tools you can use and utilise to get more productivity and more hooks and lures and stuff down into the water column, best your chances.
It's all about getting out there and getting stuck into these little critters, isn't it? Well, I think that pretty much concludes our little talk about snapper fishing and how we're going to approach this session. It's safe to say I'm utterly jumping out of my skin to get up here and give Coffs a crack, as we haven't done it yet, and the information we're hearing at the moment that the reds are absolutely getting slammed. So
exactly right. The anticipation of the area we haven't fished before is probably the most exciting part, and hopefully we do get onto a few. But from what we've spoken to a few locals up there and the local tackle shop guys, they've put us in on a direction that we're pretty damn excited for it.
Hopefully next time you see this, it's going to be with tight lines and bent rods.
Yeah, for sure, mate.
Yeah.
Pretty much wrapped up our talk, and look, there's a lot more information and stuff out there, but this is what we can bring to the table for you guys and what our knowledge is, and we believe it can help, and let's hope we can put that into practice in a couple of days and get up to Coffs and bang some fish.
Absolutely. Look, we're learning ourselves. We've got a lot to learn, but if we can pass on a little bit of information that we've picked up along the way, whether that's learn ourselves or stolen, we'll take it. But borrowed information. Look, I'm running on borrowed information and borrowed time, but
beautiful.
Hopefully we can convert a few, and next time we come to you, we'll be out there showing you exactly how we've utilised our electronics paired with our gear and send it into a situation where we're hooking up fish.
For sure.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, mate.
See you on the next one.